Ulfric Stormcloak, heroic rebel fighting for the freedom of his people and religious convictions, or useful idiot for the evil elves, who is fruitlessly weakening the best chance of defeating them. Both impressions are given and the latter interpretation appears to be more popular. I disagree with it and will be naturally arguing the former. It is the aftermath of the Great War. The Empire signed a peace treaty with the Dominion that required them to renounce one of their gods, and Ulfric, the Jarl of Eastmarch, started a rebellion to liberate Skyrim from Imperial rule. The cost of the Great War and subsequent outlawing of Talos worship had caused unrest in Skyrim, and there were many who were receptive to Ulfric's cause. When the game starts, Skyrim is in a state of civil war between the Stormcloak Rebellion and the Imperial Legion, plus the Jarls who are aligned with the Empire. The player wakes up in a convoy of Stormcloak prisoners, including Ulfric, being taken to their execution, the player having been in the wrong place at the wrong time and captured alongside them. The player is saved from the chopping block at the last moment by a dragon attack, in which Ulfric escapes in the chaos, and the player is given the choice to flee, alongside either one of the Stormcloak rebels who stuck his neck out to make sure you got to cover when the dragon attacked, or an Imperial soldier who knew you weren't a rebel, did nothing to stop your execution except meekly report to his captain that you weren't on their list, was dumb enough to think he could reason with a group of Stormcloaks which his empire was marching to the chopping block 10 minutes ago, but, redeeming quality, is a stand-up guy who feels bad about what happened to you. I get the message they wanted to convey is that dragons have returned and the Civil War should feel insignificant by comparison. We should all come together against the greater threat, but are unable to put our petty differences aside. This sentiment always came off as that of a hermit not wishing to concern himself with worldly affairs. As long as people exist, they're going to concern themselves with each other. Dealing with this is an unavoidable facet of living in the world. Slaying an evil dragon in outer space doesn't address any of it, and saying both sides bad isn't a position on the matter any more than neither left nor right is a direction. If a fair and anonymous election were held between Ulfric Stormcloak and Elisif, the claimant to Skyrim's throne backed by the Empire, Ulfric would win by a large margin, and for evidence of this one need look no further than the fact that the ban on Talos worship was deeply unpopular in Skyrim, and Ulfric opposes it at great personal risk, and the paradigm of the war itself when the game starts. It's a stalemate, with the land split down the middle and Whiterun remaining neutral until the last minute before its Jarl sides with the Empire. Only the actions of the player, a formidable force, is able to move the needle in either direction. This stalemate is between Ulfric and the Jarls who support him versus the Empire-aligned Jarls, plus the Imperial forces under General Tullius. A rebellion like this wouldn't be possible without significant grassroots support and highly motivated fighters. If the same motivation and support were present in the Empire-aligned holds, they would have an overwhelming advantage and the rebellion would have been crushed. There would have been no stalemate. The rebellion receives material support from an outside party, but all of their manpower consists of Stormcloak rebels, unlike the Empire who've sent soldiers from Cyrodiil. The rebellion is a justified uprising by a native population against an occupying imperialist power. The Empire must justify their forceful rule over Skyrim, and these justifications are myriad, starting with: the Dominion is a threat to all humans. Skyrim must remain part of the Empire in order to present a unified front against them. Fighting separately diminishes their chance of winning. I find it important to clarify what sort of empire this is. The Septim dynasty is gone. The Empire is over 600 years old, and it has been steadily losing territory from what had once been hegemony over all Tamriel. It is not an empire at its start nor zenith, but an empire in decline. However individually competent and loyal Tullius and his legion are, evidence of corruption and disloyalty in the Empire can be found throughout the game. Maven Blackbriar, a notorious crime boss, is installed as Jarl of Riften if control of the city is taken by the Empire. She would not have been able to do this without significant political influence within said empire. In the Dark Brotherhood questline, a member of the Imperial Council, the Empire's central governing body, hires the Brotherhood to assassinate his own emperor, and he wouldn't be able to gain much from this action without an afterplan involving a large group of co-conspirators. And beyond any of this, the Empire is guilty of the greatest sin any empire can have: weakness. During the Great War, the Imperial city was taken by the Dominion, then retaken at significant cost, and at the end of this war, which was supposedly a stalemate, they signed the White Gold Concordat, which disbanded the Blades, a loyal and effective spy network, and renounced one of their gods by the will of the Dominion. These were the demands in the Dominion's ultimatum to the Empire, which led to the war. The Dominion achieved its war goals. It was not a stalemate, but a capitulation. When the province of Hammerfell refused to abide by these terms, the Empire cut them loose, leaving them to continue fighting the Dominion alone. Then, when the Markarth incident occurred, and a city in Skyrim openly resumed Talos worship, the Empire allowed Dominion agents to come into Skyrim and act as a police force within Imperial borders. This is beyond the actions of a weak empire, but one that has renounced its sovereignty for a moment of peace. The Dominion can demand anything of them by holding a resuming of hostilities over their head. If Skyrim remains part of the Empire, the war against the Dominion will be fought under the leadership and management of an empire that's shown itself to be feckless and corrupt. One can say that one large unified army is better than two separate ones acting of their own accord, but this isn't necessarily true. Skyrim and Cyrodiil are both capable of raising a force large enough to incur into Dominion territory and threaten their settlements and strongholds if not met with a force of equal or greater strength. A separate Skyrim simply forces the Dominion to divide their forces into two fronts, as well as their spy apparatus monitoring two threats. The Dominion defeating them in detail is also unlikely, as neither Skyrim nor Cyrodiil would resist the chance to push into the Dominion while they're exposed if war breaks out with the other. The existential threat posed by the Dominion is apparent to all parties. The White Gold Concordat was an ugly document, but necessary for the survival of the Empire. Had the war continued, the Dominion would have won. The source for this is a loading screen text and opinions given by multiple characters, and it doesn't hold up under logic. If the Dominion had the power to finish off the Empire, why would they not have simply done so? In addition, during the game's setting, the Dominion is only at war with one power, Hammerfell, and has been for 26 years since the Concordat was signed. If the post-Great War Dominion was as powerful as was claimed by these characters, then how was all resistance in Hammerfell not crushed? The truth is that the Dominion was militarily exhausted by the Great War, but was nonetheless able to intimidate the Empire into sabotaging itself, the outlawing of Talos worship causing Hammerfell to break from the Empire and Skyrim to rebel because the Empire is weak. Skyrim benefits from trade with the Empire, and having a peaceful border with one another. Does Skyrim need to bend knee to the Empire for them to trade? Or not fight each other? Or even to both fight the Dominion when another war breaks out? The Stormcloaks are being covertly supplied by the Dominion. They're just useful idiots being used to weaken the Empire, and wouldn't have been able to rebel as effectively without this support. The Aldmeri Dominion is a supremacist regime that wants to not only destroy the Empire, but enslave all non-elves. Whatever machinations they may do, and to whoever they bring whatever benefit or detriment, is not the measure of the rightness of a cause nor reliable forecast of its outcome. It can just as easily be argued that the Dominion is shooting itself in the foot by helping the Stormcloaks, and by the admission of the same private journal that reveals covert Dominion support to the rebellion. They don't want the Stormcloaks to win, but rather for the war to drag on for as long as possible in order to have their enemies continue to bleed soldiers and resources. Even if there's good reason for Skyrim to be independent, Ulfric Stormcloak is the wrong person to lead it. During the Markarth incident, he put innocent women and children to the sword for not supporting his liberation of the city. He's a mass-murdering war criminal. The only source for this is a book called The Bear of Markarth, which was written by an Imperial scholar, and dialogue during the Markarth prison quest in which they talk about atrocities of this nature being committed by the Jarl. It is not specified which Jarl, but when the title alone is used, the natural inference is the Jarl of the hold in which they're located. If it had been Ulfric who committed these atrocities, it's more likely they would have said the Jarl of Windhelm. Not only this, but Ulfric's agreement with the Jarl of Markarth was to liberate the city in exchange for allowing Talos worship. No mention was made of the Jarl of Markarth granting Ulfric the authority to hold trials and punish his people when the battle was over. Not only this, but such heavy-handed punishments fall more under the purview of Markarth's regime, which is depicted as brutal and repressive. We can also look at Ulfric's other relevant actions. During the Civil War, if he gains control over a city ruled by an empire-aligned Jarl, no mention is made nor indication given of mass executions. He installs a new Jarl, because such is the nature of politics, but makes no effort to pursue or punish the old Jarls. If he wins the Civil War by taking Solitude, he not only spares Elisif, but allows her, a woman whose husband he killed and who we can safely assume hates him, to remain Jarl of Solitude. Even if he didn't commit atrocities, his actions during the Markarth incident is the reason the Dominion were allowed into Skyrim to enforce the treaty. Who has the authority to decide who enters Skyrim and who has police authority within its borders? If it's Ulfric or the Dominion, then is Skyrim even an Imperial province? No, it's the Empire, who signed that treaty and who, in their boundless, declining Empire weakness, folded to the Dominion's demands and allowed their agents in. They were unable to enforce the treaty themselves, nor punish Ulfric, and allowing a foreign power, a rival no less, to police your subjects is, for all intents and purposes, a surrender of sovereignty over those subjects. This is peak weakness, choosing the submissive, conciliatory option toward an enemy that wants to enslave you, and then not even being able to properly commit to that choice. In Ulfric's city, Windhelm, its significant minority of Dark Elves and Beast Race workers are mistreated by the Nord majority, and Ulfric does nothing to help them. Does he owe them his help? Is he the locus of a hive mind in his city with power over the sentiments and attitudes of his people? If we're going to look at how he personally feels toward non-Nord races, then the worst you can say is neutral if not warm. He takes no issue with an Elven or Beast Race player character fighting for his cause, or even that player character being the Dragonborn, a significant figure in Nord mythology and a trait they share with Talos, the founder of the Empire and ninth divine whom the Nords revere. If Ulfric hated elves or beast races, he would find an elven or beast Dragonborn to be an outrageous affront to his worldview. He doesn't. Not only this, but allowing Dark Elf refugees to settle in Windhelm was an act of generosity toward people who previously had nothing, and to whom he owed nothing. The racial intolerance of his people only paints this action as more generous, as he created unrest in his city by doing this. The Dark Elves are discontent with this arrangement and want him to allocate resources toward improving their living conditions, but imagine the audacity it takes to ask for such a thing, being given homes, a relatively safe place to live behind the walls of a city, then turning to the man who gave it to you and asking for more. We are told of mistreatments and abuses inflicted on minorities in Windhelm by individuals, but not of systemic abuse over which Ulfric would have control. The general trader in Windhelm's marketplace criticizes the Dark Elves' mindset, and she's completely in the right. She was able to make a living and establish herself in the city despite being a High Elf, the race which the people of Windhelm should assumedly hate the most, as High Elves are the dominant race of the hated Aldmeri Dominion. Once she integrated and became a useful member of the community, the prejudiced Nords of Windhelm stopped bothering her. The Dunmer refused to change, refused to adapt, and have instead adopted a victim mentality, and that's why their segment of the city remains a slum. Even if Ulfric's resources and attention weren't occupied by the war he was waging, the government's role is not to renovate your house. The Stormcloaks want Skyrim to be Nord only. Skyrim for the Nords is one of the rallying cries of the rebellion. Nords are the majority of Skyrim's population. If Skyrim were an independent kingdom, it would naturally serve its own interests and that of its dominant group, that being Nords. Being a minority race and or culture in any pre-modern society is inevitably going to come with difficulties, as people are socially distinguished by race, culture, and belief system, and in-group preference is unavoidable. Ideas that dissolve these barriers, nationalism, humanism, universalism, to name a few, are relatively new phenomenons in human history, which a fantasy world based on antiquity or the medieval period is not obliged to have any more than cars and radios. You can say such a world is unjust, but you cannot say the Stormcloaks created it, nor that they are unique in maintaining it. Ulfric murdered the High King of Skyrim just to make a point. He's a traitor. And here we arrive at the core values difference between the Stormcloak cause and the Imperial one. High King Torygg was a weak monarch and installed by the Empire. Imperial influence is the only reason the other Jarls would vote him into that role. Ulfric killed him easily in a lawful challenge to demonstrate this fact in no uncertain terms. After Torygg's death, the Empire attempts to make a new puppet monarch out of his widow Elisif. Someone with no experience in ruling can be seen in-game deferring to her advisors and who would also be easy to control. The pro-Empire cause is founded on the virtue of the established system, qua the fact of it being the established one. The idea that something is right because it's the law of the land, rather than being the law of the land because it's right. The conflict with the Dominion is narrated with the Empire being its primary opponent, and all stakes are oriented toward whether the Empire is in a state to defeat it, ignoring other participants like Hammerfell and an independent Skyrim as they exist outside the established order of the Empire. The Empire deems it necessary to ban Talos worship to buy time to prepare for the next war with the Dominion, and any derailing of this plan out of faithfulness to that god is deemed a negative because it's against the design set by the system. To people in a setting like this, gods are a vital facet of their identity, worldview, and moral code. They're not something you can simply deny when convenient, and living by this level of conviction is a strength, not a weakness.
There's something that's been troubling me, Falk. I'm hesitant to share it, but I feel that I must.
Speak your mind, Briley. You're among friends here.
You know that I support the Empire, as we all do. However, I fear General Tullius is underestimating the Stormcloaks. Too often the General has lost good soldiers because he did not take Ulfric and his men seriously. If this continues, and the worst comes to pass, Solitude will pay the price. The Empire is headquartered here, after all.
We don't have the luxury of hanging back to see who wins before choosing our friends, Bryling. You know this. And besides, no Nord with a shred of honor would consider it. We are no cowards.
Yes, of course, but Ulfric's message is a powerful one. More of our people flock to his cause every day.
Have faith, Bryling. When this war is over and Ulfric is dead, you'll see that you were jumping at shadows, and nothing more.
Under the system qua system mindset, all moral violations are excused as long as they serve the order and its design. Any resistance toward this order born of moral conviction or other values is deemed counterproductive or stupid because it lacks the intellectual trappings which the long-term, hypothetical ends justify the means planning the established order holds as a justification for its weaknesses and sins. And at the same time, all assumptions, inferences, and fantasies are fair game to believe in as long as they shield the credibility of that order. I have no doubt that someone will argue that this or that action by the Empire is part of a long-term plan, made necessary by the Dominion threat, ignoring the Occam's razor simpler explanation that it's an empire in decline, corrupt, and weak. The pro-Imperial cause is that of tyranny, and the labyrinth of rationalizations that tyranny will invent to legitimize its rule. Not unity with a strong central power that can resist the Dominion, but the burden of a weak empire that bent the knee to the Dominion, yet still wants to exert rule over Skyrim. They reject the nativist sentiment that drives the Stormcloaks, while at the same time rejecting higher values which would normally unify them. A cringing, bargaining, traitorous opportunism that tears down higher value rather than building it up. The Dominion is worse, but there being varying degrees of evil doesn't change what it is. The Stormcloak cause, by contrast, is the inverse of the Imperial one, founded on causes that are right, the will of the people, faithfulness to their gods, conceding nothing to the elf dominion that wants to enslave them, and fighting to make this the law of the land. Skyrim for the Nords is only a malicious sentiment if one analyzes it not only through a racial lens, but with the fallacious reasoning that specificity must necessarily imply the exclusion of the unnamed, while, in an act of profound contradiction, cherry-picking the examples of individual Nords who mistreat other races as representative. It's all a distraction from the core issue, which is that of an imperialist power ruling over them by force and the people suffering because of that imperialist power's weakness. Nord doesn't just mean the ethnic group. It also means the people of Skyrim in a broad sense. No other noun exists in lore to refer to people who live there. Skyrim for the Nords means Skyrim for its people, not the Dominion, not an emperor, nor treacherous counselors in Cyrodiil, nor an out-of-place modern ideology, but the Talos-worshipping, axe-whacking, mead-brewing people of Skyrim. Whether Ulfric lives up to this idea if he takes power is anybody's guess, but it is one of the driving sentiments of the rebellion. Disregard the Imperial propaganda. The Stormcloaks are based freedom fighters who are loyal to their gods. Their critiques of the Empire are valid, and they need offer no justification for desiring self-determination and independence from a foreign power seeking to rule them. It is the Empire, not the Stormcloaks, who must justify their cause, and in light of events we can observe in-game and lore, those wells are dry. Thank you for watching.